The global landscape of power and influence has been shaped significantly by Western nations, particularly the United States, for many decades. This has led to a complex and nuanced situation that deserves careful consideration. It's important to recognize that nations outside the Western sphere have expressed dissatisfaction with the current global rules. This discontent raises thought-provoking questions about representation, fairness, and the distribution of power in our interconnected world. To contemplate the possibility of an alternative world order, we must first engage in a thorough and honest examination of the current system's limitations. Interestingly, the core issues may not lie within the fundamental values or institutions themselves, but rather in their practical application and management. The concept of a rules-based international order presents a thought-provoking dilemma that warrants careful consideration. It's intriguing to observe how this system, ostensibly designed for global governance, appears to have been significantly shaped by the interests and viewpoints of the United States, rather than being founded on universally accepted principles or United Nations guidelines. This disparity between the idealistic rhetoric and the complex reality invites us to delve deeper into the nature of global governance. It raises important questions about the challenges inherent in creating a truly inclusive international system that represents the diverse interests of all nations. As we contemplate these intricate issues, it's essential to approach them with an open and inquisitive mind. We must consider multiple perspectives and explore the potential for positive change that could benefit all nations and peoples. This requires us to look beyond surface-level narratives and examine the underlying dynamics at play. The strategic approach of the United States and its Western allies, particularly the G7, in dividing Europe, the Middle East, and East Asia, is a fascinating aspect of this discussion. The post-Cold War era saw attempts to engage Russia economically and in the energy sector, aimed at stabilizing global energy markets. However, the exclusion of Moscow from European security mechanisms raises questions about the long-term consequences of such decisions. The situation with Russia, culminating in the Ukraine conflict, serves as a poignant reminder of the potential repercussions of excluding major powers from regional security frameworks. Similarly, the decades-long exclusion of Iran from Middle Eastern mechanisms and the various pressures applied to Tehran highlight the complexities of regional politics and the challenges of achieving lasting stability. The role of US allies in the Middle East adds another layer of complexity to this geopolitical puzzle. Their efforts to involve Washington in regional and domestic conflicts, potentially as a means of offsetting their own security costs, have had far-reaching consequences for the stability of the entire region. As we reflect on these multifaceted issues, it becomes clear that the path to a truly inclusive and stable international order is fraught with challenges. It requires us to critically examine existing power structures, consider the legitimate security concerns of all nations, and work towards more collaborative and inclusive approaches to global governance. Only through such thoughtful and nuanced consideration can we hope to address the paradoxes and inconsistencies in the current international system and work towards a more equitable and peaceful world order. In East Asia, they are doing the same with China. The US benefits from Chinese market and engage with China economically. However, to benefit from Chinese rising power militarily, they need competition with Beijing. That's why when it comes to security, China is defined as a threat. Emphasizing on China threat helps the US to limit Beijing economic power and influence and export more weapons to Asian countries neighboring China. There are others who benefit from this approach too. The United States' strategy of portraying Russia, Iran, and China as threats appears to be a calculated maneuver with far-reaching implications. This approach raises serious questions about the authenticity of these perceived dangers and the motivations behind such characterizations. One cannot help but scrutinize the convenience of this narrative in facilitating the approval of astronomical military budgets, often exceeding $800 billion annually. It's worth pondering whether these so-called enemies are genuinely as menacing as portrayed, or if they serve as convenient justifications for maintaining a robust military-industrial complex. Furthermore, the tactic of framing global threats seems to be a tool for maintaining influence over allies. This approach arguably stifles the development of strategic autonomy among US partners in Europe, the Middle East, and East Asia. One must question whether this aligns with principles of mutual respect and sovereignty in international relations. The strategy also appears to serve as a mechanism for undermining rival nations. By keeping Russia, Iran, and China perpetually on the defensive, the US potentially hinders their ability to fully realize their economic and strategic potentials. This raises ethical concerns about fair play in the international arena. In essence, while national security is undoubtedly crucial, the methods employed to achieve it warrant careful examination. The long-term consequences of such strategies on global stability, diplomatic relations, and economic development deserve thorough and critical analysis. Geographically, the US has been far from regional and global wars and conflicts. For the US establishment, war is a business by other means. More than 2.5 million people work for military-industrial complexes in different states in the United States, and approximately the same number of people work in military business in the US allies and partners. For that reason, supporting the wars in Ukraine, Gaza, and other regions are part of domestic politics and war business. Those who benefit from conflicts and instabilities are not interested in ending them, and the business prolonged the conflicts in Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Libya, Korean Peninsula will continue to do so in current and future military conflicts. The US has been engaged in wars around the world more than any other country because the costs are paid by others. Consequently, North America benefits from peace and prosperity, and many parts of the world have been suffering from regional and domestic conflicts. Politically, double standard is the most important shortcoming. The United States preach about rules-based international order. However, when we look at the US and its allies' behavior in Ukraine and the greater Middle East, Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Syria, Libya, Palestine, and so on, we see that they do not practice what they preach. Violation of human rights, international and humanitarian laws, occupation, invasion, developing nuclear weapons, and even committing genocide are allowed if it is done by the US and/or its allies and partners. Reliance on destructive power and burden sharing is another shortcoming of current international order. During the past 3 decades, the US has not tried enough to engage others, sometimes even her allies, in making important decisions on wars and conflicts. The US makes small coalitions and launches war by using its destructive power first, and then Washington tries to organize an international conference for peace building and burden sharing. And whenever others are not ready to cooperate and/or the conflicts are too costly, the US leaves the conflicts for others to suffer. Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya were some examples that we witnessed in our lifetime. The last but not least is weaponization of finance and business as a new tool in the US rules-based order that has made many countries, even Western companies, dissatisfied. Since direct conflicts have become too expensive and the Western societies are not interested to pay, the US and its allies turn more and more to economic and financial sanctions to impose their positions on others. Sanctions have been actually a weapon of mass destruction that have been used against many nations, and the most vulnerable parts of societies have suffered more from them. These are some of the shortcomings of current world order, in fact disorder, that has made many countries, companies and societies dissatisfied and interested in looking for alternatives at regional and global levels. The alternative order needs to be globally acceptable and respectable. Such an order should be based more on the UN and global values and interests, including non-intervention, respect for international and humanitarian law and human rights, multipolarity, indivisible security, peaceful development, peaceful coexistence, opposition to unilateral coercive measures, cultural diversity, etc. These values, supported by BRICS member states, are more global and inclusive. However, having common values are not enough. Words should have weight. Are BRICS member states strong enough to push forward an alternative order based on the UN and global values? Yes, militarily almost all BRICS member states are able to defend themselves. There are 3 nuclear powers among each grouping, the US, UK and France in G7 and Russia, China and India in BRICS. Though G7 members may have access to more advanced technologies, these technologies have not helped them win most of the important wars since the Vietnam War. The US failed in Vietnam, Iraq and Afghanistan. Israel, with all advanced weapons provided by the US, has not been able to win a war against a small group in Palestine in Gisul Palden Salsolwadi Bills Palestine. And providing advanced technologies for Ukraine by NATO has not helped the country achieve significant military success. Economically, BRICS plus GDP has surpassed G7. In 2023, BRICS' share of global GDP was 32%, while G7's was 29% based on PPP. According to IMF statistics, in 2024, emerging markets and developing economies, mostly those looking for reform in global governance, will account for 59% of global GDP, while the share of developed economies will be 40%. BRICS in total have bigger markets, more natural resources, and mostly enjoy younger, educated populations and greater economic growth rates than advanced, developed countries. Geographically, BRICS Plus is more global and inclusive than G7. Except for Japan, the rest of the G7 members are Western countries, while BRICS includes nations from China in the Far East to Brazil in South America and from Russia in the north to South Africa. Recently, Iran, Saudi Arabia and Egypt joined the group in the center. BRICS Plus has the capacity to create a global network that is very important for making global rules. However, to play as an alternative rule maker in global governance, there are some shortcomings that BRICS Plus needs to find solutions for. Some of them include financial mechanisms. The effectiveness of US-EU sanctions, I think, is mostly due to the effectiveness of existing financial institutions that force companies and countries to comply and sometimes over-comply with them. BRICS needs to develop its own financial and legal mechanisms to defend member states, national companies and other companies that work in or with BRICS member states against US-EU extraterritorial laws and regulations. Synergy, the level of cooperation and coordination among BRICS member states in comparison to G7 is not sufficient yet. As long as BRICS member states follow US-EU unilateral or multilateral coercive measures against other countries, willingly or not, they strengthen the current US-dominated international order, and the rest will not regard it as an alternative. Connectivity is the third important component of an alternative competitive global governance system. Corridors play a key role in this regard, especially developing corridors in regions where the US has less control, like the Silk Road and North-South Corridor connecting India, Arab and African countries to Central Asia, the Caucasus and Russia through Iran. Comprehensive and indivisible security can't be limited to military and intelligence. Economic, social and cyber security are also very important. BRICS needs to concentrate and invest more in economic and social development in West Asia, Central Asia, Africa and South America. By connecting different developing regions around the world, BRICS can truly present an alternative rule maker in global governance based on UN rules. So we've explored how BRICS might just be the alternative voice the world needs in global governance, challenging established norms and offering new possibilities. But what's your opinion? Is BRICS ready to lead the charge for a more equitable global system, or will it face the same pitfalls as its predecessors? Let's keep the conversation going in the comments below. If you found this discussion insightful, please like the video and subscribe to join our community. Remember, you're our only sponsor, and every bit helps. Consider showing your support with a super thanks or by buying us a coffee. Links are in the description. And even if you can't donate, sharing this video makes a huge difference. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.